Joe, I can't hear you. It is 23 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning. I was about to say bonjour. I don't know why. For some reason, but hey, we have French-speaking neighbors, so bonjour will still be intact. Welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, and it's something that is pretty scarce these days, but not on this program. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusu.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Kayla Magwa. It's a Thursday, and our month is really moving very fast. Like we talked about earlier, the rains are here. And one of the states that are dealing with the consequences of the rains is Lagos State. The result of years of not planning properly, years of indiscipline, years of blocking drainages. This is the result.
Look,
and that's why we like Abuja. Because you see, in Abuja, there are things that don't happen here.
Hey, I do not know what this is about this morning. Whether she's decided that she decides to diss Lagosians. But speaking a little more seriously, Kayla, it is quite worrisome what is happening in Lagos, especially in the light of information that we're hearing about the lack of coordination. And this is some admission from the Commissioner for the Environment in Lagos State, in the wake of the development of the coastal road, that there ought to have been a channel from the islands, particularly the Lekki Peninsula, which ought to enter the Atlantic Ocean. But it does appear that somehow that channel was blocked or was not considered, and so water is finding it difficult to empty into the Atlantic Ocean. Now, we understand that they have now drawn the attention of the Federal Ministry of Works to that particular error, so to speak, that particular mistake, and as such they're beginning to consider it. But in the meantime, residents now have to contend with the consequences of that oversight, that grievous oversight. That is in addition to, of course, all the other issues that Kayla have mentioned. We've talked about the disposal of waste, and that's something that we've taken on and on. We've seen the governor come out to reinstate the monthly sanitation exercise. It doesn't seem to have had much of an effect. So these are the issues. But in the meantime, I'm wondering where the pictures are. You should see the pictures. The governor and his deputy had to visit Ogombo. It's a community around the Lekki Peninsula. You just keep driving up until you get all the way to Ekpe. So it's along that road. The people now have had to ditch their cars, and they're now using canoes around the particular...
Or wading through the water themselves. And you know, just on that point, when we see the visuals of people walking through that water, that's not safe. That's not a safe thing to do.
Clearly.
And I know you're trying to do content, I understand all of that, but it's just not safe to have all of you inside that water. You don't know what it's carried.
And you don't know what's in the water.
You don't know what's in the water. You know, it's a very dangerous thing, and I see a lot of people doing that. Another disappointing visual that we're seeing from Lagos State is still, in the midst of this, people still emptying refuse in gutters. No. There's a lot of discipline that needs to come into play. And then, of course, the oversight, because that's the admission, is that this was an oversight that has now cost you in Lagos. Just take a look at what's going on. That's just crazy. You know, there's flash flood that comes and goes. But then this is just steady. People are doing a press conference in the water. You know, so this oversight, I think the heads should roll for this. I think that whoever made this mistake should be called out. And then Lagos State in itself has to be a little bit more purposeful. The government has to be very determined and contrived in the way that they want to battle this, because this is every year, and it doesn't look good for the government of Lagos State if they've not been able to nip this in the bud and actually have a state that doesn't get flooded like this. I'm wondering how the houses are. That means that you would have a lot of mold in houses where children are. There's so many far-reaching consequences. And then flooding comes with some diseases, typhoid and cholera. These are things that you would have to deal with. Typhoid, because you don't know how many channels this water has gone through and what it has carried along the way. I mean, this is something that really needs to be addressed once and for all. The discipline on the part of the residents, and then the part of the government doing what it has to do and making sure that oversights like the one we're about to watch do not continue to happen.
Indeed, Kayla. I mean, I think for me, what we also now need to keep an eye on the health consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Do not forget that this is not the first time they are highlighting it, that it could be a major consequence of all this water that we're seeing taking over Lagos. So people should be careful where they eat. The health authorities will have to sit up in terms of their oversight, their monitoring of restaurants. And we know that there's a lot of public eating in Lagos. If there's one place where the food industry thrives, is it for parties? Is it for restaurants? Is it for takeout? It certainly is Lagos. So people will now need to be a little more careful, a little more circumspect as to where they get their meals from. Otherwise, we sincerely hope that we do not have a health crisis on our hands following the flood waters that we're seeing taking over parts of Lagos. But in the meantime, just to draw attention, Lagos is now the one in the news. I do hope that other states, especially states that are equally prone, are also taking heed, because this rains have not stopped falling, and as a matter of fact, the weather is still very cloudy, even here in the FCT. And let's not gloss over it. There are parts of the FCT too that are prone to flooding. It's just that somehow they're being able to manage it, and thankfully, in some areas where they know that they're low-lying, what they do is block off the roads in those instances and make sure that residents pass along the roads, because we've had people die in flash floods for no reason at all. So look at that, the road is completely cut off. So Lagos state government certainly has its work cut out for it, but we're also hoping that the other states which are prone to this sort of...
This is Cross River, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Cross River. Okay, so clearly other states also need to take heed and sit up in this season and make sure that their residents are protected. Yes, we do understand that some states have so far suffered landslides as well, and the communities that are calling for help. You can imagine if you're a car and you're thinking that's just a little puddle, you can cross over it not knowing that that's a gully. So clearly there has to be warnings in places that danger lies ahead for motorists or residents or whoever it is that needs to pass those particular kinds of places. So please, Nigeria doesn't need to lose. We're losing lives to problems of insecurity. We cannot continue to afford to lose lives to things that are preventable and things that we certainly have a firm control over. Let's not lose lives to carelessness. We'll take a break now. We'll leave you with the pictures of the visit of the governor of Lagos State while we prepare for our next segment. It's another issue coming up bordering around freedom of information. A former lawmaker is asking for details into the collection, cost of collection of the NUPRC. Find out details when we come back from this break. But in the meantime, here's what Governor Sanwo-Olu had to say when he visited Sangotedo. Welcome back. Indeed, we did tell you that a former member of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Gbillah, is now asking for freedom of information request with 11 federal institutions, and he's asking for statutory justification and official documentation regarding a presidential directive that altered the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission statutory cost of collection. Now, there are big questions as to what exactly this is about, and we're going to be exploring a lot of things. Why this is important at this time, because this freedom of information request was made this year, but it's about a memo that was released from the office of the President's Chief of Staff. Yeah, it does seem like, you know, it's relentless, more or less. July 7, 2023, from the office of the Chief of Staff, directing permanent secretaries of the Ministries of Finance and Petroleum Resources to restructure the NUPRC statutory 4% cost of collection. Well, Honorable Mark Gbillah is right here in our studios. He's a former member of the House of Reps. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much, Malpa, and thank you, Kayla. Good morning.
Good morning. We're a little curious as to why exactly your FOI request has come at this time.
Okay, so let me start by saying that we're at a crossroads in our country where we have, it seems to be, budgets that are running concurrently and are not being implemented. We have been told severally that there's a huge windfall because of the removal of subsidy, but we're not seeing that translating into tangible results. Contractors are still being owed. Projects are not being implemented. So the question is, where is the money going? And the NUPRC is the premier regulator of our mainstay in our economy. Unfortunately for Nigeria, we still have oil and gas as the mainstay of our economy. And they're the main regulator. So whatever affects the NUPRC affects our revenue, affects you and I, affects international recognition and respect for our systems and our operations, and hinders even the foreign direct investment that we're looking for. So that's the importance of it. And why now is because this is when the information came to the fore. And this is why it's important, we're trying to point out, because I am part of a coalition soon to be registered. We're trying to register it, but right now we're working through our lawyers, Kronos Legal. We're trying to let Nigerians see a very veritable tool that we have not been utilizing in this country, which is the Freedom of Information Act. In the 9th Assembly, I'm sure, Mark, but some of you called us a lame duck. I don't know what you're calling the 10th Assembly now, you know, but we have seen that there has not been that ability of the legislature to hold the executive to account, which is their fundamental responsibility. But Nigerians need to know that they also have the powers. It's interesting to note that in Section 3 of the Freedom of Information Act, even those that are physically challenged, there's a provision for them to make a freedom of information request. Those that are illiterate can actually go to an agency. They can go to the office of the Chief of Staff and say, okay, I know if you speak English, but I want to know so and so. And the officer is supposed to write it down and then give the person requesting that information that document in writing and then respond to it. So this is the foundation of what it is we're intending to do. And like you rightly pointed out, I will still give you a background to this issue. You know, I don't know if I can go ahead and do that.
By all means.
Okay, so the main fundamental thing now is a memo was written from the Chief of Staff to Mr. President saying that the NUPRC is collecting a huge amount of cost of collection and it is not being justified why the members of staff are earning such huge allowances. You'll be surprised that that is part of what is in the memo. And so that the justification for them is so that money is so much for them that it needs to now be split. 2.5% for the NUPRC to now utilize, and then 1.5% that was supposed to be ring-fenced for a particular metering project. And the directive was given to the permanent secretaries and to the Accountant General of the Federation. So the question is, what is the cost of collection? Now, the cost of collection, unfortunately, is not statutorily provided for in the PIA to the NUPRC. Is the authority that has a specific percentage. But the 4% was inherited from the DPR and FAC allocations. So that is a lacuna that some of us sought to take care of when we were enacting the PIA. But you know, this whole tendency of carried, you know, affected it. So that's a fundamental lacuna. But that from the statutes that I have seen, remember, a freedom of information request is not accusing anybody. It is requesting for clarification about that. But from the statutes that we have seen, the freedom of information requires that they provide for us details of what statute was used for the directive from the president. The fact that the percentage is not indicated does not mean the president can give that directive, because it is clear in the provisions of sections 12D, 22 and 24 of the Act that all funds that accrue to the Commission are subject to appropriation by the National Assembly. That is why one of the requests we have sent is to the clerk of the National Assembly. He needs to let us know, was there any appropriation officially submitted to divert so and so funds for this usage? And secondly, the Act indicates clearly what that amount is supposed to be used for. Can the president by fiat alter the usage of the amount? No, he cannot. We need to start to recognize that we're a country of laws. And if we do not start to do things properly, then of course the recognition will continue to be a pariah nation to the rest of the world. There's another very critical part of it that I'll still get to. At the moment, it is alleged by Pengerson, because Pengerson has been internally engaging the NUPRC, and we're privy to that information, that 1% of that 1.5% now is being sent to the midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authority. That is another very strange part. So there's 0.5% that we don't even know the whereabouts of it.
Okay. Well, I do also know, and this is through sources, that I know that there is some internal dispute between the NUPRC and NMDPRA as a result of jurisdiction. I mean, we know that there used to be one big body before, DPR, but now they've been split. And then we also know that in terms of who does what, how do we define what is midstream and downstream, what is just strictly NUPRC duties. Those lines in some places appear blurred, and there are allegations that, oh, you are encroaching on what we are supposed to be doing. So whilst that is being handled, you are now saying that you have written 11 federal institutions, and clearly, I mean, this is a good thing, because I do remember that when this FOI request, when this FOI bill was being pushed in the National Assembly, it was made to seem like it was something for journalists only. It was something that only journalists were going to benefit from. But clearly, we're seeing that even former lawmakers are now exercising this particular law to try and get information. What exactly has the reaction been? I mean, have you been able to get clarity on what exactly is the matter in this instance?
Okay, so it will still be important for me to highlight a few points, but let me respond to that quickly. None of the agencies has responded except the CBN.
Okay.
Now, the CBN responded technically, and as far as I'm concerned, because I'm looking at the provisions of the Act, it's an excuse. They responded to say that we asked for the CTC of the document, but that the CTC is a requirement under the Evidence Act and not under the Freedom of Information Act. Now, that is strange to me, because the Act clearly indicates it in the FOI Section 7 that if you are giving a reason for not responding, you should show what part of the Act allows you to take that position. But they are referring us to the Evidence Act, not that part of the Act. So ordinarily, they should know that the FOI makes it clear that regardless of any existing statute, they're supposed to provide that information. So we intend to, our lawyers will respond to the CBN accordingly, pointing out what we consider to be the statutory position regarding this request. The others have not responded, so probably when I leave the studio today or tomorrow, we're going to issue a 72-hour ultimatum for them to respond. And if they still don't respond, then we're taking them to court.
It's interesting that you have asked for a certified true copy, not just information. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, so we asked for two things. We asked for information, because in the FOI Act, if you don't have that information, you can get back to the person and say, okay, we don't have this information. We have asked for information, then we have asked for documents. And the CTC is required for official documentation. It's sort of like what is considered to be typical in our country. A CTC only verifies that this is official and this is a true representation of the documents you are requesting. So that is what the CT is requiring. Now, let me point out here, and I need to make this very clear, that part of what we intend to do, like I said, we're trying to adopt this veritable tool to hold our government accountable, because we realize that even after office, and Mr. President, his chief of staff, and those who are working with him need to know this is not a partisan position. This is about citizens holding their government to account. And when they leave office, we will pursue this issue against the president.
It's very interesting because
we'll pursue it against the chief of staff.
That's exactly why some people will say, okay, maybe that's why the CBN has drawn the line. Because you're not just asking for information, you're asking to weaponize the information. The request for a CTC, a certified true copy, is something that will be admissible in a court of law.
Definitely.
And it's very interesting that even though you're a former lawmaker and can very well write a letter, you have chosen to apply for this through lawyers. I do not know if this is a very good example to citizens in terms of how to actually utilize, how they can utilize the Freedom of Information Act. Is there any reason, are there layers underneath why you've requested for this particular information?
Okay, so let me clarify something you just mentioned. There is no statutory requirement for making the request. You can make the request as an individual, you can make the request as an organization, you can make the request through your lawyers. We chose to make it through our lawyers because we chose to have good legal advice and counsel regarding what is exempt and what is not exempt, regarding the processes that we need to take. That's important to make. And so that's why it's important for Nigerians to understand that this is not doing anything negative. This is how it's supposed to be. And then the request for the CTC, obviously, it is something that should be admissible in court, because when we get the information, we would look at the statutory basis upon which it's done. If it's unlawful, if it is not backed by any statutes, then we will explore what remedial measures are to hold the government account. This is our duty as Nigerians. This is what we consider it to be. It's not weaponizing, it's not witch hunting, it's holding people account to know that even when you're in office, you need to be guided by laws, and know that if you do not do that, you are going to leave the office. Section 305 and several authorities, FAWEMI versus the federal government of Nigeria, Mohammed Abacha, and all of that, there are statutes, there are authorities that show that when you leave office, your actions while in office, even the president, is not immune to prosecution. So we would have all these records, we will keep them, so that at the time he leaves office, if there was any infraction, we would take him up on it. If there was any infraction by anybody who gave the directives to, who were just obeying without checking. And that's why it's important that we want to point out here, and I'll read some figures to you so you understand the magnitude of what we're saying. Because I watched somebody called Don Azza, you know, Don Anza or Don Azza or something. He was trying to counter a report by People's Gazette. I hear People's Gazette brought out a story about this. And apparently the Don Anza or Don Gaza or whatever he is not a science student or a student of mathematics. So on a lighter note, those of us who got an A in maths maybe need to educate him, because he didn't seem to understand the figures that were mentioned. People's Gazette, why I'm not holding forth for them, were correct in the amount they indicated as the value of that 1.5%.
That's 54 billion.
That's 54 billion. But the interesting thing Nigerians need to know is that in 2024, that amount was 104 billion. This is the amount we're saying they said was allocated for a contract. How do you allocate a contract that is perpetual? The cost of collection is a recurring amount, amounting to 104 billion in 2024 and 54 billion after 2023. And you say you are ring-fencing it only to this contract. And that contract they are referring to, and that's another error that Don Anza made, is not the statutory duty of the NUPRC to execute. In the 7th schedule, 7L, part 3, it clearly indicates that this is the responsibility of the licensees and lessees to do. It's not the responsibility of NUPRC to deploy that metering. So that's why we're asking, okay, so let's show us what is the basis for your doing that. Because the Act clearly says, and like you know, I was a former part of the leadership of the Upstream Committee in the House. I'm quite informed by the provisions we made in the PIA. There's no allowance for the NUPRC to be deploying what they are allocating 104 billion to deploy.
Oh, just a moment. By licensees, you mean the operators?
The operators, yes.
Yes. We'll come to that.
It's clearly provided.
We're totally out of time. But just so you can we understand? Let's say we're talking to just regular Nigerians.
Yes.
Because this People's Gazette investigative report that they've done, you know, it's causing ripples everywhere. Everyone is talking about this. So let's understand in simple terms. What are you accusing Mr. Gbillah of doing? And how does that impact Nigerian people?
Okay, first of all, I'm not accusing my former speaker of anything.
Okay.
I am saying that the actions taken from what I've seen in the laws, in the extant laws, were not in line with the statutes. And we want to receive information to clarify how that was done. If you say the NUPRC was collecting too much money, did you get advice from the relevant body, which is the Incomes and Wages Commission, to say, okay, because we made it a provision in the Act to know that because of the industry they're in, they couldn't be paid normal wages.
Yes.
They needed to be provided with allowance. So these are all allowances made in the Act. Okay. And these are things you can invite Pengerson to clarify for you, because Pengerson has listed several issues they are having now because of this non-availability of these funds. Bayo Onanuga, again, responded erroneously, saying Mr. President has the power to instruct. That is not correct, I dare say. And I challenge Bayo Onanuga and the Chief of Staff to an open debate.
So the justification...
And I'll provide the statutes. They should show me the statutes that give the President that power.
The justification for his request, he cited the parts of the PIA.
24, yes, 24,
so 24 to C.
Yes, if you read that provision, there's no such power indicated there. That just talks about the allocation of the cost of collection. Then it down talks about the usage of that cost of collection. It says nothing about Mr. President making that kind of decision or giving that kind of directive. And that's why I'm saying that these are things that if the government is transparent about this, they should instruct Mr. President, should please instruct these institutions to give us these records. It's my statutory right as a citizen to request for them. Give me these records, let me see them, otherwise I'll go to court and request for them.
Yeah.
Of course, Nigerians will say, okay, is this not our normal court system? We say, yes, but let us test the system. I want to see the judge that will see the statutes and want to rule against it. We will take it up with them in the NGAC and any other international courts. We're ready, we're taking this fight the long haul. We want to let Nigerians see that these are avenues we have. I'm not in the House at the moment. I'm not in the National Assembly. But I realize, and I sat down and I realized, but I have powers as a Nigerian.
I always try to find out, how did they get this memo? Because this whole story started from a memo from Aso Rock.
No. I think it's a memo from... the memo was sent to the ministry. So I believe that is where...
That's where it came out from.
That is where it came out from. That's obviously where the news outlet obtained...
That's where People's Gazette got it from.
I'm just a little curious, though. What is the reaction of the members of the National Assembly been? Because if you say that the president acted ultra-virus through his memo, has the National Assembly, which you were a part of, maybe invited you, or at least to say, indeed, maybe we were sleeping on our jobs, we're sleeping on our rights. This is something that we ought to have done, and maybe the president cannot do this. Has there been any reaction?
Well, let me give them the benefit of the doubt. They might actually not know that this has happened. And if the committee in charge has any knowledge of this, then it is obviously because we're in a National Assembly where the chairman of the National Assembly sings on live international television, "On your mandate we shall stand," which is disturbing. So obviously that means that kind of institution cannot hold the executive to account for what might be unlawful. And that is why this is not where we're stopping. There's another Executive Order 9 we hear that was issued by Mr. President redirecting the Frontier Exploration Funds, which again was enshrined in the PIA, that it should now be removed and be paid. You know, I think, Mr. President, sir, you need to have right advisors. And that's why it's good to employ the opposition maybe to help him, because it seems those who are in his party or who are his appointees can't tell him the truth. I wonder what the Attorney General is doing, because you cannot, in this country of laws, just issue instructions by military fiat. We're not a military junta, maybe from our antecedents of military rule. You know, so clearly we're not accusing anybody, we're asking for this fundamental information. And like Don Anza said, there were some rather, let me call it, excessive statements made by People Gazette. Again, like I said, I'm not holding account for them, but if Don Anza too, I want to challenge him to a public debate to let him know that his mathematical calculations were wrong. Okay.
Well, I mean, certainly that he is now also an important source of information, particularly for, you know, those who are trying to understand the nitty-gritty. Yes. And certainly clarification that will be important. But what are you hoping to achieve? Where would you say your job is done and, you know, you have received clarity which you are seeking through the FOI request? Okay, so one of the key things we need to know is that particular contract, and this is where we will start to know whether there were interest in it. Who are the people who executed that contract? Has it been executed? Where are these metering systems? Where are they located? Let us see them, where they are pumping 104 billion annually to deploy something that is not your responsibility, as indicated in the Act. Who are those companies? We can go to CAC and ask, who are the owners of these companies? How was the payment made? Was there any procurement? Well, that's why we wrote to the BPP. Was there a certificate of no objection? We wrote to the budget office. Was it part of a budget? You don't just expend Nigerian funds at your whim and caprice. There are statutes, there are rules. So what we will say we have achieved, first and foremost, is when we have been given the information. That's all we're asking. You can see that I'm not accusing anybody. I am clearly saying that I have just indicated what I believe is not the power of the president to do. What in law is called is ultra-virus. So what you need, certified true copies, not just the information provided like this. Yeah, we want certified true copies. You want certified true copies. So, but if they still want to just give us the information as is, as it is, will you that's accept fine. It? You'll accept it? We'll still accept it, although we'll prefer certified true copies, something like you said, that can be tendered before a court of competent jurisdiction. Okay. We'll see how that eventually pans out. We have to thank you for your activism and showing Nigerians, reminding us of very quickly, and there are issues in terms of security, which we want to delve into, although that is a sensitive area. It's one of the things that I believe is exempt, but we intend to navigate around it because we don't know all the resources being pumped. Okay. How are they being utilized? I think that will be another conversation, Honorable. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Honorable Mark Gbillah is a former member of the House of Representatives. He used to represent Gwe East and Gwe West. I hope you've been spared. Your community has been spared the latest onslaught in Benue State. No, we have not, unfortunately. Oh dear. Well, as you did say, security is another conversation. Thank you very much once more for speaking with us. Thank you very much. Daily. We'll take a break. When we come back, Laulu Akande will be with us in the studio. Please stay with us.
72 hours after the rescue of 39 school pupils and teachers abducted in Oriire local government area of Oyo State, lawmakers reconvened for plenary with glowing tributes to the nation's security personnel, as contained in a motion sponsored by the Senate's leader.
That the abduction represented a disturbing expansion of organized criminal activities into the southwest geopolitical zone and constituted a direct attack on the right of every Nigerian child to education in a safe and secure environment. The successful rescue operation was achieved at considerable cost as gallant members of the Nigerian Armed Forces and the Nigerian Police Force, displayed extraordinary courage, patriotism, and uncommon professionalism in confronting the terrorists, leading to the ultimate sacrifice of Lieutenant F.A. Isaac, then Private Silas Musa, 81 Battalion, Nigerian Army, and Sergeant Abena John Jerome.
From the government of President Goodluck Jonathan, we have recorded about 1,700 pupils abducted. And I also know that there's a safe school initiative established by the government. My question is it working?
Everybody is bothered. As it is today, we feel that another community will soon witness this same occurrence. It's like, where next will it happen? The same intelligence that they have used or that they are using to rescue all these abducted children should also be used to forestall it.
In summary, the need for us to incorporate the provision of psychological support, trauma counseling, and rehabilitation for the rescued victims, not just for the Oyo victims, but every other kidnapped victims.
During the debate, lawmakers also harped on the continued captivity of many school children and victims held by kidnappers across the country.
Some school children are still in captivity. Therefore, I urge the military to show the same bravery in the rescue of these children in Askira Oba local.
We're back now in our studios in Abuja, and Mr. Laolu Akande is here with us in the studios, a former presidential aide and also current host of Channels Television's Inside Sources. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Good news emanating from your state, at least giving us something to cheer.
Yeah, the rescue.
This week, yes, the rescue. Even though there are still people who do not believe that it was a rescue, but at least we saw that there were visuals to back that this was a rescue. And we've been saying, it's been in the news also, the governor of the state asking for a probe, the circumstances. He wants to know if there was collusion, etc., etc.
Wants an independent probe from the United Nations.
Yes, the Senate has reacted to that. So as the presidency, reacting through Mr. Bayo Onanuga, that this is politics taken too far. I'm sure you have been sitting and observing all that is going on and making your thoughts on them. What do you want to share?
Well, quite a few things. But maybe we should start from the point of view of saying that, look, this is a situation where anybody who looks at the facts and the what has happened objectively, you cannot deny that this is actually a rescue. We have bodies, we have people that have been killed. You know, I don't think that all of that could happen. You have people that have been killed. You know, we have a fair amount of information of the innovative intelligence that was engaged. You know, how it is that the terrorists, you know, I mean, I call them terrorists, you know, how they were isolated and cut off from their supplies, you know, and clearly, you know, nobody has even come out to make any claim that anybody exchanged money. I mean, how could that be when we even know that a number of the terrorists have been neutralized? So I think the debate on whether there's a controversy about whether there was a rescue, I think that is very useless, really. This was a rescue. You know, what I think we should try to understand is how can we turn this, you know, into a template? You know, how is it that this was possible? I mean, some people even said that 56 days is long. Well, hey, well, it's all good that ends well. You know, we all wish that this happened much earlier, but it did happen, and those folks are back at home. So that is a very good thing. We must commend the president. We must commend the military. We must commend the police. We must commend the DSS and even the local, Amoteco and rest of them. You know, because you know everybody worked together and we have this result.
What the question about safe schools came up as a result of this, and the lawmaker representing the parts where Oriire is located, he was here, and he said to us, "There is nothing like safe school." In that area. I remember that you were at the launch of the Safe Schools Initiative.
I've even interviewed the person that is in charge of Safe School Initiative.
What's the status of the thing? What's going on?
I think from the...
And where's our money?
From the last time that I had a conversation with... because that office is domiciled in the Ministry of Finance.
Yes.
You know, and the idea was that, you know, just so they can get money to get this done. But I don't think that they have advanced very significantly. The last time I was trying to get involved in the matter, it was a question of, you know, they having to release the money. So I don't know how far the Safe School Initiative has gone, you know, regrettably. You know, but to come back to the issue of the governor, which is the second point that, that Marco had raised, you know, I think that if you don't look at what Governor Akande has said, if you remove the political perspective, you know, which, yeah, it is legitimate for people to say, okay, you know, but what he's saying essentially is that Nigerians, including himself, a governor, does not trust our institutions. And that is something that ought to give all of us a bit of concern. You know, if he's saying that we don't know what happened. Now, he is the chief security officer of Oyo State. And if he's coming out to say that we don't know what happened, that is a very grave statement. It's a very grave statement. If nobody knows what happened...
Is it that he didn't know what happened?
He ought to be the person
or he is befuddled at how things happened, or wondering how things could have failed to have happened.
Yeah, I mean, he made quite a bit of insinuations suggesting that there is more to what happened than meets the eye. You know, so, and of course, you know, it's political season, so, you know, people making political implications is also open season for that. But the point I want to emphasize is that even our politicians don't have trust in the institutions, not talk about the people. And that is why it's important for us to take ourselves a little bit more seriously than we currently do. And yes, you know, I think Ambassador Jimoh Ibrahim has responded that, look, Mr. Governor, you don't know what I'm talking about. You know, United Nations has no business about internal investigations. You know, Nigeria has its own structures, you know, which is a correct position by the ambassador. But the point of the governor is that we don't trust ourselves. We need to build institutions that are not partisan. We need to build structures that, you know, whether you are in power today or you are out of power tomorrow, it will give us what it ought to give us. It is very worrying and alarming that a governor, a sitting governor, is saying we don't know what happened. I would like to ask him a few questions about specifically what he meant. You know, if we had the opportunity, people should ask him, people should ask Makinde, okay, tell us specifically what are your specific areas of doubt. Because, so what we know is that those people were, you know, abducted, I think on May 15, you know, on May 17, you know, about, you know, one of them was beheaded. We saw the video. Another person died, you know, and the military and, you know, they organized, and now they've been released. Mr. Governor, is that not the accurate, you know, sequence of events? Are there other things that you are wondering? So Makinde holds Nigerians to give us a little bit more detail about what he has said. But I don't think they should shout him down. The guy is a sitting governor, you know, but he then owes us more responsibility to tell us specifically what it is. And calling the UN, it just shows that the governor is ignorant. You know, but to raise the point that these issues ought to be properly investigated, it's not a bad thing, but you tell us specifically what does he have in mind.
Well, yes, Taylor.
Yes, we are running out of time, and we have quite a number of things to get to before the top of the hour. This arrest of Adeni Adeyemi, this alleged fake agency, he's in police custody. At least he was arrested in Osun State. What do you make of this whole matter? Well,
you know, it's getting messier, you know, and the arrest, you know, yeah. The judge says that he didn't come to court. You know, they said there have been 5.
It was a bench warrant. He failed, which is the reason why he was arrested.
Exactly. I was listening yesterday to you know, the gentleman who came out to speak for Mr. Gbillah. And what it is that we must remind ourselves is that, look, whether the president is bold enough to ask Gbillah to step aside, or whether Gbillah has the decency, the simple decency to help the president by stepping aside, you cannot befuddle Nigerians about what it is that is happening.
You think he should step aside?
Gbillah holds it to himself, to his family, and to the president and to Nigerians to step aside. It is just the common human decent thing to do.
What if he has
anything
nothing to do
short
with
of that? He doesn't.
What if he has nothing to do with this? What if this? What if the letter was fake?
It does have many things to do with it, and I'll explain to you why that is not supposed to be an argument. The guy has then told us, for instance, that the budget, the itemizing of the agency in the budget, he knew nothing about it.
He was shocked.
Now, I'm not saying whether what he said is true or not, but you cannot have somebody making those very significant, huge claims about people that are in government, and then the people are still sitting down there. How do you ever think it will create an impression of trust? How do you think that people will consider that the investigation that the president has ordered is going to be fair? If they are still there, they can still make moves.
But if we continue, because there are people, you know how this thing works, Mr. Loud. People can make up stories and scream really, really loud because they know that Nigerians will say there is no smoke without fire. If nothing, even if nothing happens, the person will have to step aside. Your political enemies can actually, you know, start to use that against you. If we always have to do that, then what if it just continues that way? Are we not creating some kind of
let me give you
some kind of machinery where people can just use, because they scream the loudest and slung mud at somebody, because of that he has to step aside? How do we manage this line?
The way we manage it is very simple. Because let me tell you, I was privy to a conversation by one of the closest friends of the president, and Gbilah's name came up. I said, no, don't talk about Gbillah. Gbillah is running up and down trying to solve his problem. So the fact that he's still in government is just it's a poor reflection. The man cannot do any other thing now until he sorts out this nonsense. Don't let's pretend. Wherever he is right now, the man is troubled. Mr. Gbillah right now is troubled. He cannot focus on any other thing until this trouble goes away. Is it not therefore easier to just say that, look, I want this thing to be, transparently sorted out?
Should Mr. Akume also step aside?
Well, Mr. Akume has not been directly mentioned the way
that letter came to his desk. The least he could have done was verify.
I'm not saying, the person who is making the allegations has not mentioned Mr. Akume. I'm not saying that Mr. Akume should not also be questioned, no. But Akume's name has not been, and I heard the gentleman yesterday trying to say that it's not only Gbillah, that is involved. But guess what? This guy, the DME guy, who is the center person, has not mentioned any other person. When investigation gets there, they should do what is right. But for now, Gbilah's name has been mentioned again. How do you think it was possible, if what this guy is saying is true, that he didn't know anything about how the budget, that he was even in detention when they put in the budget?
So let me bring this up. It's interesting that you watched Mr. G.T. Ogunye yesterday, who's representing Mr. Gbillah. But I do not know if you also managed to watch that of Osita, the representations of Osita Chidoka, who had a very interesting perspective on this. And he says that this is something a government not to see as an accusation, but something that should bring back a sense of reforms within our institutions, that there's too much deference to names and powers, and people are too unwilling to ask questions, which, by the way, means that we need to commend very seriously the courage it took the NIPC to raise questions about the existence of this phantom agency, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that brought this to the fore, that who is this person inviting foreign diplomats without inviting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because clearly that would have taken some courage. But looking at what he said at the end of the day, what would be most interesting is that even the Chief of Staff knows that he does not have the authority to issue any letter of appointment. And that the basis of this man's entire claims, all of the basis, falls on a purported letter of appointment which was said to have come from the office of the Chief of Staff. And that it will be very key. Key to this will be the investigation of that particular letter. And until that is done, to say that this indeed came from the office of the Chief of Staff, that he believes that the Chief of Staff should remain in office.
Okay, let me say the place where Chidoka got it wrong. So it is the proper procedure, indeed, for presidential appointments to come from the SDF. But guess what? There are instances where that is not the case. I'm going to say here for the first time on public TV that when the presidential advisor, I think it was a jury, became a presidential envoy or something, even Bajai had in the news. And the Secretary to the Government of Federation didn't know about it. And it was out there.
UN envoy appointment.
No, not UN envoy. I think climate change.
Climate change. Oh, yeah.
The SDF, I'm saying it and I'm challenging any of them to counteract what I'm saying. The SDF was not aware. Bajai himself was not aware.
So where did it come from?
So it came from the presidency. So I'm saying that even though the procedure is for these things to come from the SDF, like Chidoka said, what Chidoka did not say is that there are instances where that is not followed through. As a matter of fact, there are also certain kinds of appointments that are made for people who work in the villa or in the presidency that doesn't come from the SDF.
Yeah, so that was
so that is not an excuse at all.
In fairness to him, he made those kinds of differentiations. He talked about difference between a council, which the president can set up unilaterally, and a commission. And a commission such as what this gentleman
I think,
was said to have been heading.
I think we're just
going around in circles.
It's a mumbo jumbo.
Okay.
What it is that this guy is claiming that he has a letter of appointment. And people are saying that, oh yeah, the letter of appointment, Chief of Staff doesn't have the power to have letter of appointment. I am saying to you that there are times when people get appointed properly without doing the proper thing. And they walk in the villa and they get on assignment. So why that is true that it should come from SDF? And I just give you an example here on national TV of a situation where the presidential spokesperson made an announcement that the Chief of Staff was not aware of that the SDF. So these things happen.
I think the point he was trying to make also is that questions now then need to have been raised to say, is this proper? Mr. President, did you really make?
And that is the reason why the names that have been mentioned, that this thing initiated from your office, you need to step aside so that there is a dispassionate. Like I said to you, the man cannot do any other thing, even while in that office. He cannot focus until this matter is sorted out. So it's just being fair to himself, being fair to his family, and most importantly, being fair to the president and to Nigerians to just step aside. By the way, ICPC that the president has given the assignment to do this work, they ought to have given us some kind of information. It's now 1 week that the president said, I'm giving you 30 days. ICPC has not said a word. Now, that's not right.
So we need to put some fire on that day.
Yeah, ICPC needs to tell us, yes, Mr. President has said, and we are going to do a dispassionate work. At the very least, ICPC ought to assure us that that is going to happen. Even assure the president that the assignment that you have given us, we are on to it.
All right, so ICPC, over to you. We're hoping that you've heard this and that you will issue a response to let Nigerians know that you heard the president's directive at the minimum. Mr. Lalo Akande, it's always a delight speaking with you. There are so many more issues to take up, but let's rest it here. And wait till next week, Thursday.
Next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. He's a former presidential aide. That's why you know so much. He's an insider. And also the host of Channel Television's Inside Sources, which you can catch, by the way. tomorrow and Sunday. Thank you for watching Sunrise today this beautiful Thursday morning. It's raining. Sunshine is still here. We're here. You can catch us online as well. Thank you for watching. I'm Al Felby.
Have a great day ahead. Stay safe. If you're driving, hey, the roads are very slippery. Take it easy. I'm Kayla Magwa. Business Morning is at the top of the hour.